Matthew chapter 5, verses 21 through 48. If someone would take 21 through 30, then 31 through 40, and then someone 41 through 48. Matthew 5, verses 21 through 30, the first one.
You have heard the ancient of the told, you shall not commit murder, whoever commits murder shall be liable to the court. But I say to you, that everyone who is angry with his brother shall be guilty before the court. Whoever says to his brother, you good for nothing, shall be guilty before the Supreme Court. And whoever says, you fool, shall be guilty enough to go to the fire of hell. Therefore, if you are presenting your offering at the altar, then remember that your brother has something against you. Leave your offering there before the altar and go. First be reconciled to your brother, and then come and present your offering. Make friends quickly with your opponent in law while you're with him on the way, so your opponent may not hand you over to the judge, or the judge to the officer, and you be thrown in prison. Truly I say to you, you will not come out of there until you have paid up the last cent.
Keep going to 30, please, sir.
You have heard that it was said, you shall not commit adultery. I say to you that everyone who looks at a woman with lust for her has already committed adultery with her in his heart. If your right eye makes you stumble, tear it out, throw it from you. For it is better for you to lose one of the parts of your body than for your whole body to be thrown into hell. If your right hand makes you stumble, cut it off and throw it from you. For it is better for you to lose one of your parts of your body than for your whole body to go into hell.
All right, and someone get 31 through 40, please.
It was also said, whoever divorces his wife can give her a certificate of divorce. But I say to you that everyone who divorces his wife except on the ground of sexual immorality make her commit adultery, and whoever marries a divorced woman commits adultery. Again, you have heard that it was said to those of old, you shall not swear falsely, but shall perform to the Lord what you have sworn. But I say to you, do not take an oath at all, either by heaven, for it is the throne of God, or by earth, for it is his footstool, or by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great king. And do not take an oath by your head, for you cannot make one hair white or black. Let what you say be simply yes or no. Anything more than this comes from evil. You have heard that it was said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. I say to you, do not resist the one who is evil. Do not resist the one who is evil, but if anyone slaps you on your right cheek, turn to him the other also. And if anyone would sue you and take your tunic, let him have your cloak as well.
All right, and someone 41 through 48, please.
And if anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go with him 2 miles. Give to the one who begs from you, and do not refuse the one who would borrow from you. You have heard that it was said, you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I say to you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, so that you may be sons of your Father who is in heaven. For he makes his sun rise on the evil and on the good, and sends rain on the just and the unjust. For if you love those who love you, what reward do you have? Do not even the tax collectors do the same? And if you greet only your brothers, what more are you doing than the others? Do not even the Gentiles do the same? You therefore must be perfect, as your heavenly Father is perfect.
So, a lot of times in the Old Testament, what were the Israelites doing when it comes to the law? Bare minimum. So they were just following the law exactly, right? And they weren't doing anything extra. I mean, hey, I met what I was supposed to do, right? And so what's Jesus doing here?
Look at the spirit of the law.
Chuck?
Look at the spirit of the
Look
law.
at the spirit of the law, okay, Archie?
Telling you to go the second step, take a mile.
Go to the second step, okay? Anyone else?
I know in Malachi, it said that they were giving, even for their offerings, things that were sick or broken,
Right, right.
things like that. So they weren't really following the
The
law.
law, correct. And a lot of times, they were thinking, well, I didn't do X, Y, and Z, so I'm good, right? And, you know, God was gonna tell them not, or Christ was gonna tell them, not only do you need to do these things, but the spirit that you're doing them in is wrong. And, I think that a lot of times we don't understand that. A lot of times we wanna check the box, I've done this, I've done that, and I'm good. But is that the case? No. Needs to, and you go into when he's looking at, going to court, you may be right, but could you lose in court if you don't settle? You know, because we see a lot of corruption in courts these days. We hear a lot of things that aren't correct. So a lot of times it behooves us to, settle out of court. But why is it also good to settle out of court? Say again?
Just help us in the Bible to do it.
It tells us in the Bible to do it. Why? Because we don't need to bring our issues out so that the world sees us and say that they're hypocrites and, we're not gonna do anything with them,
I'll be saving some money too.
Save you some money too, yeah.
Maybe not from a spiritual standpoint, but, a trial is a very expensive thing to the county to live in.
Right.
And if you take these little things that don't amount to anything, you're spending a lot of money that your county don't have, especially when they can't get the water fixed.
Right.
You're spending a lot of money that the county doesn't have on something that's trivial.
Right.
And maybe even sending somebody to prison on something that's trivial. So they don't have room for somebody that's out murdering and killing and pillaging and all that. So they don't have any help for them. Think about it.
Plus, both of you are spending money on lawyers
Yes.
that you can spend doing something else, doing some good works. And I know a lot of times this is talking about anybody, but even within the church, we need to be careful. But even out in the world, if someone is suing us, we need to try to settle just because of those reasons too. I mean, more than likely, a lot of the problem starts because why? We're all too unwilling to admit we were wrong, or and so therefore it advances. So there's a lot of things to do to make sure we're right. What if you're mad at your brother? I mean, it's not just saying don't visit your brother. I mean, or ignore him anymore, right? It says go make it right. So is that hard to do? Very hard.
Communication, that's the key to it.
Communication is the key, yeah. Mhm. So, I'll read something here. Whoever forces you to go 1 mile, go with him 2, and that's in Matthew 5:41, as we know. So a young police officer was taking his final exam for the police academy and was given the following problem to solve. So think about this. You are on patrol in the outer city when an explosion occurs in a gas main on a nearby street. Upon investigation, you find that a large hole has been blown in the sidewalk, and there's an overturned van nearby. Inside the van, there's a strong smell of alcohol. Both occupants, a man and a woman, are injured. You recognize the woman as the wife of your chief of police, who is passing away at a conference in Florida. A passing motorist stops to offer you assistance, and you realize that he is a man who is wanted for armed robbery. Suddenly, a man runs out of a nearby house shouting that his wife is expecting a baby and that the shock of the explosion has sent her into premature labor. Another man is crying for help, having been blown in the adjacent canal by the explosion, and he cannot swim. Describe in a few words what actions would you take? Pray. Exactly. Look, so is this guy in a predicament? Because there's so many things going on, right? Moral dilemma, right? So what would you do in that case? Someone just
Call for backup.
call for backup and just handle things as you see them. Try to classify it to what these help the most, okay? What else?
On in your, I don't wanna
Call the ambulance.
see if the guy.
Maybe call it the doctor on the phone so he can just walk you through it.
Yeah.
He can walk through it.
You know what this young man said? The young man thought for a moment, picked up his pen and wrote, "I would take off my uniform and blend in with the crowd." So think about that as a Christian when you're out in the world. You know, if all these things are going on, are you going to join in, or are you going to take off your Christian face and join in with the world?
Terry,
Yes, sir.
I applied for a job one time, and there was a question sort of like that on there. That said, if you saw one of your fellow employees stealing from the company, what would you do? Would you go to the boss and tell him, or would you ignore it, or would you go to him and talk to him? So that's sort of the same thing.
Right. What did you answer, Archie?
I told him I'd go to him and talk to him.
And that should be what we do.
So after I lost that job,
There is a saying that has been stated in many different ways, but basically says, yes, I'm a Christian, but I'm not radical about it. In other words, I take off my uniform and blend in with the crowd. Our key verse today is found in the middle of a section of the Sermon on the Mount, where Jesus is calling his followers to a deeper, more radical level of commitment. Jesus takes 6 commonly understood beliefs and turns them completely upside down with the words, "But I say to you." So we can understand that, you know, Christ is saying you might be thinking you're doing what you need to do, but I say to you, this is what you need to be doing. The context of a second mile statement: don't murder, don't commit adultery, don't get divorced, don't make false vows, an eye for an eye, love your neighbor. These are common teachings that everyone in the crowd would have been familiar with. And a great percentage probably didn't have much of an issue with any of them. It's easy to focus on the things we're doing right in our lives. It's easy to teach things we have perfected. And it is certainly easier to listen to a sermon that has no personal application. As Joe says, as long as you're not meddling in my life, the sermon's great today, right? When you start meddling, that's when the sermons get hard to take, because you know that it's something you need to correct. It's easy to say, well, if that had been me, I wouldn't have been found guilty. Yet by making such a statement, you are guilty. This was a predominant problem in Jesus' time. People focused on the letter of the law instead of the heart of the law, as we talk about, Doc.
You talk about the concept of informed conformity versus coercive conformity. If you've been informed of something from rules and the tendency to common sense agree, that's a conforming principle. Many of these examples are conforming or informative conformities, where they inform you of something and you would probably conform to them because you agree with it. But coercive conformity means that I'm telling you, you'll be driving an EV by 2030 and gas stoves are no good and so on. So coercive conformity, conforming with a coercive rule where somebody's telling you what it is. These are examples of that, and the Lord has turned many of these examples inside out and upside down. And I hope everybody understands the difference between coercive conformity. Will I conform because I'm being coerced to do that? Or will informatively, I agree with that, or can't agree with it, or not agree with it, and I will conform to it. That's the principle of what you're saying. And all the examples get confusing after a while if you don't understand that principle.
So a lot of people in Israel were coercively conformed to what the Pharisees and Sadducees said they had to do to follow the law, right?
And that's how many of our denominations came about, because coercive conformity, as in the Anglican Church, brought the existence of our Constitution of the United States. Coercive conformity to the Catholic Church also, with their rules, led to the Reformation and the denominations of churches and principles we see today. So this principle should be many times first and foremost. Are you being coerced, or are you being informed? And if you're conforming to it, what's going to be the result? I mean, that's throwing it in.
I got you, yeah, I got you. Jesus is trying to tell his hearers that true righteousness is not about half-hearted rhetoric, rather wholehearted righteousness. So in other words, don't just conform to the law and that's it because I'm meeting the law, like the Pharisees said. You need to also think about, what did Jesus mean to do by these things? Jesus takes these common teachings, murder, adultery, divorce, vows, revenge, and love, and uses exaggerated language to let his hearers know that it's not just about keeping the law, it's about what? Say it again, Doc. Living a life that honors God, right? That's what it's all about. It's not just about keeping the law, but you got to live a life that honors God. The spirit of the law, right? Because a lot of times when people make a law, or especially when you were little, mom and daddy told you not to do this, so what'd you do? Found another way to do it that wasn't that way? You try to work your way around the law. So, and isn't that why the Jewish people in the Good Samaritan story, what happened? They avoided that area and avoided the man. So if you avoid it, it's not there.
Prime example of that is Christ healing on the Sabbath.
Yeah.
And, they say, oh, the law says you can't do that. So you're supposed to follow the law, or you're supposed to help someone.
Right.
So, it's like.
Yeah, the spirit of the law is not to intentionally have something to do every Sunday where you can't worship God and take care of God, or Sabbath in that time.
Right.
And yet, even in the law, it said if your ox is in the ditch, you were able to get that out. Just because understand that that's your livelihood and that's something that's important. So Jesus healing on the Sunday, they took that out of context. Like I said, they just wanted to make it a work, and you couldn't do any work on the Sabbath, is what they were saying.
Have you ever noticed how many times Jesus healed
On the
on the
Sabbath.
Sabbath?
Yep.
And it was almost a poke in the eye to those that were so adamant. They were looking for some way to criticize Jesus. So he did heal life.
Right. And but also when he's healing on the Sabbath, you got to think about this: the people were for him. So and so how could the Sadducees and Pharisees do something at such a time when the people were following Jesus and impressed at what he was doing and listening to his teachings? And when did they do it? And go get him at nighttime when nobody was around. Jesus is not saying that anger is the same as murder or that divorce is the same as adultery. He is certainly not giving us permission to physically harm the body that God gave us. But what he is doing is trying to take his hearers beyond the letter of the law to the heart of the law. In today's language, this section of scripture might sound like this. So you're not a murderer. Great. Let's talk about your anger problem. You may be faithful to your spouse, but is your thought life pure? You have your divorce certificate, but did you really try to stay married? You don't make false promises, but do you put your trust in God or yourself? You believe in doing what the law requires, but did you forget that the law requires that you love people? And speaking of love, you love your neighbor, but how are you doing with folks who you don't like so much? Why do I get the feeling that after he said that, you could have heard a pin drop? Jesus was speaking to people who may have said something like this: yes, I'm religious, but I'm not radical about it. So as we look at this go statement, we need to understand how radically these words would have been viewed by the religious establishment. So as we was talking about coercion, does anyone like to be forced to do anything? Why not?
No result.
No result.
Sometimes it's painful.
It's painful. But especially here in America, we got our own free will. We do what we want, right?
You just don't like somebody telling us what to
To a
do.
point.
period.
And don't like, so it went to a point, Doc, right, exactly. Don't like people telling us what to do. And as little kids, what do we say when we get in arguments? And even as adults, you can't tell me what to do, right?
You just-
We hear
yeah,
that all the time.
You get in your comfort zone. And so then when you're challenged, it will be, that's where you grow from. But if you're just staying like this, which you're comfortable. So the challenge that when people force you to do something, I mean, I just know from like work, you have to do things that you don't want to do, but in the end, you grow from, I mean, I learned more from it because they forced me to do it, whereas if I wasn't forced to do it, I wouldn't have done it.
Right, and I was gonna say something like that too. A lot of times at work or different things, it's not things that you want to do. Sometimes you don't want to read, sometimes you don't want to take classes or go do extra activities that they're wanting you to do, but it does, help in your growth. And a lot of times we can't see that. A lot of kids, do they want to go to school?
No, and if you don't make them,
They won't.
they won't do it, you know,
Yeah.
so you have to. I guess force is the wrong word, because like I want to nudge them and
Course.
promote them, yes, but not like shove it in their face, but they do have to work, you know.
So a lot of times you do have to be put in situations that you don't want to do for growth, right?
Right.
Terry, I've seen that trickle down through like this generation. It's like a lot of kids don't have homework anymore because they're not forced to do it at home. So they don't get sent home with books anymore. When our kids are in school, it's like, where's your book? We don't have books.
Right.
How are we supposed to help you if you don't have a book? And it's because kids weren't forced to do the homework because they weren't bringing it back to school. And so I think the school system just decided we're not gonna give them homework.
Right, because then the teachers would get in trouble because they make bad grades because they wouldn't turn in their homework. And then the teachers got in trouble for that. Is that right, Tina? Okay. So it's kind of weird when your teachers are trying to teach you to grow and give you more information, then the parents don't support the schools in teaching your kids. So, and then we wonder why nowadays you see Facebook, things like that, people can't spell. I mean, it's terrible. People don't know how to write a sentence. It just goes on, and sometimes you're like, what does that say?
So also, I mean, like what he's talking about here, how do I want to say this? Like, I know I'm following the law because that's what someone has taught me. So Jesus was forcing them to look at it and go above what the law said.
Right.
And that's, he wanted them to just think, because all they'd been told was what the Pharisees told them. They hadn't decided for themselves, oh, I need to go above this. Because they all thought, like the rich young ruler, I mean, not the rich young man, he said, oh, I followed the law, I've done this, I've done this, I've
He's
done
checked
this.
everything
And
off.
he said, well, I'm good. And then Jesus forced him to say, okay, sell all you have. And he didn't want to do it, you know, and that's where the pain comes, because it would have been painful to him
To do
to
that.
give up. But Jesus was forcing it, you know, he wanted him to go above.
No one likes to be forced to do anything. Under Roman law, if you were a Jew and you were plowing your field, spending time with your children, or just minding your own business, and a Roman soldier came up and placed his pack on the ground, you were obligated to pick up his pack and carry it 1 mile. The only other option was to go to jail, and that's not really an option. People were looking to Jesus for freedom from this oppression. But not only does he that they still have to carry the pack, they now have to carry it an extra mile when they went to Jesus. He said, Don't just meet your obligation, go above and beyond. And what does that do when people see that?
Changes attitudes.
Changes attitudes? How's that?
Well, it shows you're not doing it because you had to, but you're just doing it to help the other person.
Right.
And then the other person realizes that as well. And, they are more appreciative of the help.
Right. Does it also give you opportunities to talk to them about why you're going the extra mile, doing the extra things?
And I think if you saw a Jew carrying an extra mile for a Roman soldier, you would think, man, they're willing to do that, because by the law, it's only this, but they're going the extra. So it makes an impression upon people that can see what's going on.
So, go ahead.
Calls attention to their way of life.
Calls attention to their way of life, because all they were expecting is they were gonna carry it a mile, right? So you can impress people, make people wanna know what's going on when you do more than what's required of you. And that's what Jesus was saying, don't just do what's required, because everybody can do that. You know, because you're coerced basically to do that, but go above and beyond.
Hey, Terry,
Yes.
just from work experience, there are gonna be those that say, wow, what Terry did, he carried that an extra mile. And then there's gonna be others that are gonna say, what an idiot. You only had to carry a mile.
Yeah.
No, I'm serious, I've dealt with that, in the workplace.
I have too, and
It's
it's
like,
people say, why are you making us look bad? I'm not, I'm just doing my job. So, you have to careful what?
Or they'll just say, give it to Sarah, he'll do it.
Yeah.
That's right. The only other option was to go to jail. Like I said, that's not an option. What does it mean, go the extra mile? It means to go beyond what is expected of you. Can you imagine the reaction of the Roman soldier when he said, that's good, you have done your duty? And the Christ-following Jew responded by saying, that's okay, I can go further. Now, what were you saying about your children? So, you know, he's carrying on a conversation, trying to develop a relationship. The soldier would then immediately know that there was something different about this man. Because most of the time, if they were carrying a pack, do you think they were talking to the soldier? Probably not. They probably just had the pack, went the mile, dropped it, and left. Okay? So go beyond the expected. It's not just about going beyond what is expected in man's eyes, but about going beyond the expected in God's eyes. If we take seriously the words of Jesus to go beyond what is expected of us, we will be viewed as radical. We will be called anything from radical to naive to unrealistic. So the hard question is this: are we being called those things, or have we kind of blended in with the crowd, as a police officer said he would do? Jesus is telling his followers, and he is telling us, that law keeping is important. Don't think I come to destroy it. What did he say? I come to fulfill it. The crux of righteousness goes beyond mere law keeping and reaches into the heart. Yes, still don't kill people, but go deeper with it. Yes, still don't commit adultery, but go deeper with it. Yes, still fulfill your obligations, but go even further than expected. Not only will it make an impression on the one you serve, but it will continually change your heart as you begin to realize that it's not all about you. And I think that's one of the most important things to realize. And I truly believe people that are selfish and don't do for others are some of the ones that are most miserable in this life. I really believe that, just because I think there's a satisfaction in knowing that you've helped someone out. Not to brag, not to let other people know, but to understand you've done something to help someone else improve their life or do something that they couldn't do. So
You've heard people say, give it till it hurts,
give
give it till it feels good.
till it feels good. Yeah. So just think about that, going above and beyond. So exactly how far does Jesus want us to go? Therefore, you are to be perfect as your heavenly Father in heaven is perfect. He told us that in Matthew 5:48. Are we going to be perfect? No, but through Christ we can be. As Jesus tells us why he's saying these things to us. As a result of going further than expected, we are to be perfect like our Heavenly Father. Perfect is a tough word for us to accept. So it is important for us to fully understand what it means. This does not mean that we never sin, but it does refer to the end goal for which we strive, spiritual maturity. We're to grow up in maturity to the goal of the standard of our Father. Our righteousness is supposed to be more than mere law keeping. Jesus tells us that it is a quest to be more like Him, the one who went further than expected for us. Did Christ go further than? He did. He died on the cross. He went all the way. So let's think about this. What does this look like practically? It looks like someone rising above the instinctive desire to strike back, get even, or settle the score. I mean, that's why He told us to turn our cheek. Because most of the time, what do we want to do? Get revenge, get even, fight back. And is it hard? But a lot of times it says pray for our enemies. But it's hard. It looks like swallowing pride and abandoning self-interest when we do this. It looks like long-suffering and forgiveness. It looks like showing grace in the face of the unfair. It looks like Jesus. Did He not do all of this? What did it say? He went to the slaughter like a lamb, didn't say a word. He went to His death. Are we willing to commit our lives to God, to leave all boundaries to following Him? Are we willing to take the extra step to call ourselves a second-mile Christian? The first mile is that which is required of us. It is the mile that is expected of us. We live in a world where many do not even make it to the first mile marker. The first mile is vitally important. It is what makes us function. It is that which is expected of us as believers. But it is not the finish line Jesus calls us to. He calls us to go. So what's wrong with this statement? You ever been guilty of thinking of this? Yes, I am a Christian, but I'm not radical about it. What's wrong with that? You got a problem.
You blend in, like I said, well, really.
You blend in.
World, keeping the light under the bushel.
Keeping the light, put the bushel over your life. You're not letting people see. That's true. That's good.
Christianity is radical.
Christianity is radical. That's right. Margaret?
I was just gonna say, as we've been talking about this, I keep thinking of that hymn, all the way my Savior leads me.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay. Anyone else?
Is that considered a lukewarm?
Lukewarm? Yeah, we could. Yeah. Straddling the fence. Doc?
You know, if you have an informative conformity, and that is you take the Lord's words as informative, and you conform, your activities go on with that, and then saying the result is radical or not radical, that's an oxymoron. That's not consistent with what you agreed with in the first place. The result, and so when you start talking about results, you want to know what kind of a result did you get from being informed, conforming to that, being informed, and the result. And the person said they're not radical. Well, that's not consistent. That's not a consistent result. In fact, that's probably an illegitimate result. That's like so many statements we see today, end justifies the means and so on. It's not consistent with that should be questioned right there and there.
But aren't we looking at radical as doing something that people are not expecting, something that's...
What's radical?
Well, right. I mean,
radical?
if it's a relative term depending on the group you're in. But if you're in the world and they're seeing you doing all this stuff,
so they're trying to trick you on that one. That's just a trick. That's like a trick question.
Right. So it can be, as a Christian doing what Christ tells us to do, we ought not think that it's radical.
That's right.
I mean, that's something that we're supposed to be doing, something that Christ calls us to do. But as the world looking at us, they would think it was radical.
Here, I think the scripture here goes along what we're talking about, the great degree, 1 John 2, 15, 16. Do not love the world or things in the world. Anyone who loves the world, love the Father died in him. For all that is in the world, loves the flesh, loves the eyes, the emotional part of life, not the Father, but on the world.
So where's your love?
So if we leave here and like to take off our Christian garment, we blend in the world, it delivers. There's something on there.
Sir, did you have something to say? Yeah, yeah.
No.
Okay, I thought I seen you raise your hand. If y'all, you could go to Matthew 23, we're not gonna read all of it, but what is the difference between the letter of the law and the heart of the law? What's the difference between the letter of the law and the heart of the law?
Intent,
Intent?
that's it.
It's, you know, one thing that Christ says here to his disciples, the scribes and Pharisees sit on Moses' seat, so do and observe whatever they tell you. But not the works they do, for they preach, but they do not practice. So there's a lot of things in here where people preach and tell you what the law is, but they don't follow the law.
Living a Christian life is not something you do, it's something you are.
You are correct.
And
You live it.
can't
It's you. It should be
just
you.
1 day a week, or 2 days a week, or 5 hours a week.
Right.
You can't do that, it has to be something you do.
Where do you get 5 hours? Sunday morning class, Sunday,
Tuesday morning.
Sunday night, and Wednesday. Okay, Tuesday Bible class. But you know, we gotta be careful. We've talked about that before. You know, if you're only going to church and that's all God that you do is 4 hours a week out of 168 hours, what kind of percentage is that? Not very good. Not very good. How does going the second mile look to those who do not know Christ?
Unique.
Unique. Have you ever had somebody, why'd you do this for me? You know, why did you come help me? Why did you do this and, you know, you won't take payment? Or why do you go and you know, you didn't have to do all that. Do you ever get that?
What is your response?
God bless you. I mean, you know, I just was wanting to help.
We just pay it forward.
Pay it forward, that's what they say, yeah.
Just because I wanted it, I thought you needed it.
Right, there you go. Is it hard to do sometimes? It can be, but I think if that starts becoming a part of your life, it's easier. It's just something that you want to do. What are some practical things we can do to go the second mile? So think about what's going on in your life right now and the life of others that you know that's around you. What can we do to go the second mile? Go lift up a burden that they might have. What are the lots going on in their life right now? Hey, can I go do X, Y, and Z for you? I know that it needs to be done. You've got a lot of other stuff going on. Can I help you in that way? You know, do we just sit back and wait for people to come ask us? Or do we observe their life because we know who they are and know what's going on? Then can we go help?
Jerry, I think so if we have a neighbor whose house is very dilapidated, it's just, it needs a lot of work, but he won't let it go.
Yeah.
Sean's offered many times.
And sometimes
He's too proud. He's a godly man. He just doesn't want somebody to burden themselves.
and sometimes that is the case. It's hard to help if people don't let you help. Yeah. But I mean, and I know y'all probably, but you know, hey, this is something that God can bless us with by helping you. You know, maybe that would be a way, and I'm sure y'all done whatever you
I
can.
mean, he
Yeah.
drives down in the yard, we talk, and, you know, he's always waiting. You know, even our neighbor down the road, he's a youth minister, and he'll try and go help him. He's just very proud of him, he doesn't want you to burden yourself with his problems.
And I think sometimes that's the way a lot of us feel, is we don't want people helping us because, you know, I know they've got their own things going on and, I can handle it myself, right? And Archie?
Sometimes you can get yourself in a spot to try to hit somebody.
Yeah, yeah.
I've got a friend that's a member of the church in Tyler, Texas, had a bad, nasty heart attack. I called him and said, if there's anything I can do.
And he said yes.
Yes. He wanted some money, but he wanted me to come to the church where I go and ask y'all for money. What's wrong with where you go?
So, yeah, sometimes you get put in a,
Well, it sort of puts you in a spot. I wouldn't come up here and ask the church for help for somebody that goes to church somewhere else. I even remember the Church of Christ, but
why wouldn't he ask?
why
them?
wouldn't he ask them?
Your brother, yeah.
Maybe you had, and they wouldn't have it.
Yeah, I was gonna say, that'd be his results.
Yeah. Maybe they know something we don't, or, but
Yeah.
and then again, could be hard to ask people you really know, because you may think, well, they think I'm X, Y, and Z, and if I go to them and ask for money, then they'll know.
Well, the problem is, y'all know this person too.
Roger?
I grew up, I told the story, my dad taught me to be self-sufficient. I needed help sometime, but, people would offer, and I would say, no, I got it,
Right.
until I learned that I was taking away their joy by doing that. That's something we all need to learn. If we get in that mode where we don't want to ask, we don't want people to help us, sometimes we're taking away their joy.
Right, taking away their joy, their service to God, that's something they're doing to help, definitely. And the last, before Gary rings the bell, we got a minute. In Genesis 24:14 through 27, we know that Rebecca exemplified the second mile mentality by what did she do when they were coming to look for, not only did she give water to the men that were traveling, she also said, hey, I'll water your camels too. So, no, not drawing water and pouring it in the trough.
You know how much water a camel drinks?
Yeah. And no, I don't know how much they drink. Thank y'all.